In the second half of his book, Convergence Culture, Where Old and New Media Collide, Henry Jenkins turns his attention to a specific kind of consumer participation, called fan fiction. Although he does address both video and written forms of fan-created products, today I'm going to focus on the world of written fan fiction and its impact on both consumers and producers. Jenkins explains that when it comes to fan-created products, there are two general reactions from corporations. The first is a prohibitionist reaction that has corporations intervening into fan-created websites and collaborative communities to demand a cease and desist. These prohibitionists do not think that fans have any rights to the material and say that the ideas, plots, settings, and characters are property that the corporations own. On the other hand, collaborationists take a more cooperative view of the fan fiction phenomenon. Instead of banning the appropriation of the world that they have helped market, these producers see a way to benefit from fan input. For example, many video games allow for users to participate and comment on game creation and game development. According to Jenkins, the collaborationist mindset is really the only rational approach to dealing with fan production. There's no easy way to completely stop fans from creating their own movies, writing their own stories, producing their own magazines, and in general just adopting the world given to them through popular media. In addition, Jenkins explains that corporations who do not allow consumer participation will eventually lose the interest of the fans and will be negatively impacted. Therefore, in order to successfully participate in this convergence culture, producers should allow for fan participation, even if, like with Lucasfilm and the Star Wars saga, there are restrictions to that participation. Regulating fan creation is much better than forbidding it, because just as children are wont to rebel against their parents, so would fans against corporate suppression. Since an open-minded view of fan-produced material seems to be the most beneficial, it makes sense that J.K. Rowling's positive view on fan fiction created from her acclaimed Harry Potter series was met with fan approval and helped propel the books to become a global phenomenon. Much of the fan fiction created about the series consisted of written stories or books collected on fan websites. These places where fans could share their work with others are called affinity spaces. Within these forums, amateur authors could develop their work and explore their abilities while maintaining a critical distance. Using someone else's characters and setting, etc., allowed for fans to develop their skills rather than focusing too deeply on creating their own worlds. As Jenkins explains, these affinity spaces serve as a form of apprenticeship for aspiring authors and creatively inspired fans. Anyone of any age could post their work to these sites and gain insight from their fellow fans. Some sites, such as Sugarquill, were even designed around the editing process and had teams who would work with the authors to edit submissions. Despite the critiques of this approach to learning and developing writing skills, it has produced many acclaimed fan productions. One such author who rose to fame through Harry Potter fan fiction is Cassandra Clare. The series she wrote, called the Draco Trilogy, brought her fame as one of the first fans to gain popularity for her work. However, her work also brought with it controversy. In order to delve more deeply into the complicated world of fan fiction and fair use, I propose an investigation of Cassandra Clare and her recruitment into the commercial world. Cassandra Clare began her career as a writer of fan fiction stories, mostly about the world of Harry Potter, created by J.K. Rowling. However, Clare also produced a story based on The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Her most famous writings were known as the Draco Trilogy, which not only helped to gain her the position of being a grassroots writer with a global following, but also helped establish the development of Harry Potter fan fiction. However, due to her sudden rise to fame, Clare's work came under intense scrutiny, and soon a controversy exploded over her apparent plagiarism. According to the critics, Clare used quotes and lines from various science fiction sources, such as other books or television shows. According to the fans, she was not just appropriating the characters and the magical world developed in the Harry Potter books, but was in fact stealing others' work. Despite the fact that some fans acknowledged that fanfiction is in itself a form of stealing, they claimed that Cassandra Clare had taken too many liberties. She was not creating a story that was her own. Although all fanfiction borrows the world in which the story plays out, the fans claimed that, as with all fiction, the idea and the concept should be solely your own creative product. It is because of what the fans saw as direct stealing of others' creative products that Clare came up against such animosity. According to those who investigated her work, Clare borrowed her dialogue and witty writing from other books, films, and television shows, one large example being her direct use of lines from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a popular science fiction television show. It is at this point that one must reflect on the justification of fan fiction and its apparent distinction from plagiarism. Since Clare was not making a profit from her works, was her work considered plagiarism, or should it fall under the label of fair use? She was not profiting from her works, so did it truly matter if she did not create it all herself? For many fan fiction advocates, it did matter. In their minds, fan fiction is a form of creativity that is still subject to certain rules, despite it being at the amateur level. However, despite the plagiarism controversy and animosity from proponents of fan fiction, Cassandra Clare gained a commercial book deal to the surprise of many. The commercial book deal started with a trilogy called the Mortal Instruments series. However, it has since evolved into 6 present-day books and 3 that reference the same world but in a different time. For many of her growing commercial fan base, Cassandra Clare's work was new and exciting. However, for many who knew her fan fiction, in this new series they saw much of the same dialogue, characterization, and development as in her fan fiction series. This brings up a new question of whether one can plagiarize oneself. Cassandra had never commercially published her original Draco series, therefore could having similar characters and relationships in a different world with a different plot still be considered plagiarism? Does changing the setting and the names make it truly different and distinct? These questions of creativity and ideas about characters, plots, dialogue, etc. brings up the concept of intellectual property. This legal term seems to be so complex in its application that it is difficult to determine who owns what idea. If one really wants to argue the case, could all of Cassandra's work be traced back to J.K. Rowling's ideas? And even if one wanted to, now that her work was part of the corporate system of commercialized media, would it even be worth it to figure it out? Overall, I think the ideas of intellectual property and fair use are still too ambiguous to be widely used in the realm of fan fiction. Instead, there seems to be an arbitrary choice between positive and negative producer reactions of prohibitionists and collaborationists. The ability to utilize someone else's literary foundation to build upon almost depends on luck. Cassandra Clare could definitely be considered lucky. To bring the topic full circle, due to the popularity of the Mortal Instruments series, there is going to be a movie and there are already sites popping up with fans creating their own fan fiction about these books. A book-inspired fan fiction which inspired books, which is now inspiring more fan fiction. It seems like one giant circle of production and consumption with complicated questions of ownership that will take time and precedence to answer.